The Johnsons had always been a close-knit family, and at the heart of their home was their beloved golden retriever. Max, Mark, and Susan, both in their late 30s, had two young kids, Emma and Jack, who were 10 and 8. Max had been with them for over 5 years, and in that time, he'd grown into a trusted family member. He had a unique ability to comfort and play with the kids, making them feel safe and loved. Max was more than a dog. He was a protector, a companion, and a best friend. His golden coat shimmered in the sun, and his friendly eyes radiated warmth, but there was more to him than just being a lovable family pet. The Johnsons' home was a typical suburban house nestled in a quiet neighborhood, with a large backyard where the children often played. The family spent most evenings together, either watching TV or enjoying each other's company in the living room. It was an idyllic life, filled with laughter and comfort. Max would always be nearby, often lying on the floor or perched in his favorite corner of the room, watching over his family with unwavering loyalty. Little did they know that this seemingly normal evening would soon take a turn that would reveal just how protective and brave their beloved dog truly was. Max had always been a good dog, but his protective instincts had only become more apparent over time. He wasn't just content to lounge around all day. Max took his role as the family's guard dog seriously. On the few occasions when someone unfamiliar walked near their home, Max would immediately start barking, alerting the family to potential threats. He wasn't aggressive by nature, but his alertness was unmatched. Whether it was a stray dog wandering the neighborhood or a delivery person dropping off a package, Max would announce his presence with an insistent bark that commanded attention. But Max's protective nature went beyond simple guarding. He had a unique bond with each family member. With Emma, he was patient and gentle, lying beside her when she needed comfort, especially after a bad day at school. With Jack, he was energetic, always ready to play fetch or run around the yard. For Susan, Max was a source of emotional support, providing quiet companionship when she needed to unwind. Mark, on the other hand, saw Max as his best friend, taking him on long walks and sharing quiet moments together. Max was not just part of their family. He was the glue that held them together, his presence ensuring that everyone felt safe and loved. The Johnsons lived in a picturesque suburban neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Their house was a traditional two-story home, painted a warm shade of beige with white trim around the windows. The front yard boasted a lush garden of flowers and a small tree that provided shade during the summer months. Max, with his golden fur, loved running around in the backyard, chasing after tennis balls and rolling in the grass. It was a peaceful and quiet community where everyone knew one another, and neighbors often exchanged pleasantries across the fence or while walking their dogs. But tonight, something felt different. The house was quiet, with the only sounds being the soft hum of the television and the occasional rustle of wind against the windows. Mark and Susan were curled up on the couch, watching a movie, while Emma and Jack were finishing their homework in the dining room. Max, as usual, lay in his favorite spot by the front door, his eyes watching the world outside through the glass. It was an ordinary evening, one that should have been filled with warmth and comfort. However, the tranquility was about to be shattered by an unexpected intruder who would test Max's loyalty and courage in ways the family could never have imagined. It was just another peaceful evening at the Johnsons' home. Mark and Susan sat on the couch, holding hands as they watched a movie, while the kids were scattered throughout the house. Emma was reading a book in the corner of the living room, and Jack had set up his toys on the floor. The house felt cozy, with the soft glow of the lamp illuminating the room. The air was filled with a sense of calm, and the outside world seemed miles away. Max was content, lying peacefully near the door, occasionally glancing up from his resting spot to ensure everything was in order. The kids were busy with their usual evening routines, and the only sounds were the faint clicks of the remote control and the soft rustle of pages turning. There was nothing to suggest that anything out of the ordinary was about to happen. For the family, it was just another typical night. One of those moments in life when everything feels perfect and the last thing on anyone's mind is danger. Little did they know, the calm was about to be replaced with tension, and their lives would be forever changed by the actions of their brave golden retriever. Max, who had always been a quiet, peaceful presence, would soon show his true colors as a protector of his family. Max had always been attuned to the slightest changes in his environment, a trait that had often impressed the Johnson family. Whether it was a change in the weather or a shift in the air, Max seemed to sense things that others couldn't. This evening was no different. As the family relaxed, Max's demeanor began to change. He lifted his head from the floor and started pacing back and forth, his eyes fixed on the front door. His ears were perked up, and his tail, which had been lazily wagging moments before, stiffened with alertness. Max wasn't acting like himself, and the family could tell something was off. Mark, still half watching the movie, looked down at Max, who was now standing at attention near the door, his body tense and rigid. "Max, what's wrong?" Mark muttered, unsure of what was causing the dog's sudden anxiety. Susan, too, noticed the shift in Max's behavior. "He's acting strange," she said, glancing toward the door. Max's usual calm had evaporated, replaced by a sense of urgency that sent a subtle chill down Susan's spine. The family had grown used to Max's occasional quirks, but tonight felt different. Little did they know, the danger was already on its way, and Max was the only one who could sense it. The evening had seemed so serene, but there was an unsettling figure now creeping through the shadows outside the Johnsons' home. The intruder had been watching the house for days, studying the family's habits, and waiting for the perfect opportunity. He had noticed the routine, how the family was often home at night, how Max could usually be found resting peacefully by the door. The intruder knew that breaking in would be easy if he timed it right. Armed with the knowledge of the family's schedule, he began to approach the house, his eyes gleaming with intent. The night was dark, and the streetlights cast long, eerie shadows across the neighborhood. The intruder, wearing dark clothing to blend in, slowly crept up the walkway, his footsteps muffled by the grass. He reached the front door and carefully examined the locks. Everything seemed quiet inside, and he was confident the family wouldn't notice his presence until it was too late. What he didn't know was that Max, with his sharp instincts, had already picked up on the threat. The dog's protective nature kicked into high gear, and he wasn't going to let anyone harm his family, not without a fight. Max's alertness intensified as the intruder crept closer. The hairs on the back of his neck stood up, and a low growl rumbled from deep within his chest. His eyes were fixed on the door, and his body trembled with anticipation. The moment the intruder touched the door handle, Max leapt to his feet, barking loudly and charging toward the door. His barking was sharp and forceful, each bark reverberating through the house. It was the kind of bark that demanded attention, one that couldn't be ignored. Susan jumped up from the couch, startled by the sudden eruption of noise. "What is it, Max?" she called, rushing to the door. But Max was already on high alert, his bark unwavering. Mark stood up, his heart racing as he realized that something was very wrong. Max, usually a calm and friendly dog, was now an impenetrable force, his instincts taking over as he tried to protect his family from the looming threat outside. The intruder had not expected this kind of reaction, and Max's loud barks filled the night, signaling danger to the entire household. At first, the Johnsons didn't know what to make of Max's frantic barking. Susan rushed to the door, peering out the window, but saw nothing. "It's just a stray, Max," she called out, trying to calm the dog down. But Max wasn't buying it. His barking grew louder, more insistent, and he began to pace in circles, his eyes darting toward the door as if he could sense something just beyond the threshold. Mark joined her at the window, also looking outside, but seeing nothing out of the ordinary. "Maybe it's just the wind," he suggested, trying to dismiss the situation. But Max wasn't easily fooled. His instincts told him otherwise, and his eyes were fixed, unwavering on the door. Max had never acted this way before, and the family began to feel a sense of unease. Something about the dog's behavior made them realize that this wasn't just a case of barking at a passing car or a raccoon. Max was trying to tell them something, but they just couldn't put their finger on it. As Max's barking grew louder, Susan's anxiety began to rise. This wasn't a random occurrence. It was as if Max was warning them, but warning them about what? The intruder, hearing Max's ferocious barking from inside the house, grew frustrated. He had been cautious at first, thinking he could slip in unnoticed, but Max's loud barking was now alerting the whole neighborhood. He knew his time was running out. His hands shook with anticipation as he fumbled with the lock, trying to force the door open. His eyes darted nervously down the street, but all was quiet, save for Max's persistent warnings from inside. The intruder was convinced that he could overpower the dog, but what he didn't realize was that Max's bark wasn't just an alarm. It was a challenge. Max stood at the door, his body rigid with adrenaline, his bark growing louder with every passing second. He could sense the intruder's movements, the tension in the air, and the growing threat to his family. Max wasn't about to back down. As the intruder pushed against the door with force, Max charged at it, his paws slamming into the door with a determined thud. The force of the impact shook the house slightly, and the intruder hesitated, a look of surprise crossing his face. He had expected to be met with a more passive dog, but instead, Max was acting as though his life and the family's depended on keeping the door closed. Max's barking grew even more frantic as the intruder's attempts to force the door open continued. The family could now hear the urgency in Max's voice. Susan and Mark exchanged worried glances, realizing the situation was escalating far beyond anything they had anticipated. "What's happening out there, Max?" Susan muttered, her heart racing. Jack and Emma, who had been huddled together in the living room, now sat wide-eyed, staring at Max's relentless behavior. Max's fierce growls echoed throughout the house, and the children instinctively huddled closer to their parents. It was clear that something wasn't right. Max's growls were no longer the friendly, playful sounds the family had grown accustomed to. They were deep, guttural, and filled with purpose. The family knew that if they didn't act quickly, Max might be at risk. But it was impossible to ignore how much the dog cared for them, how far he was willing to go to keep them safe. Max wasn't just barking anymore. He was sounding the alarm, preparing to protect the family from what he knew to be an imminent danger. His determination was unwavering, and as the intruder pushed harder against the door, Max's growl turned into a fierce, almost primal bark that could no longer be ignored. The intruder's plans were beginning to unravel. Feeling a mix of fear and determination, Mark approached the door. The barking from Max had reached a point where he could no longer ignore it. "Stay back," Mark told Susan and the kids, his voice filled with urgency. With one swift motion, he reached for the doorknob and flung the door open, preparing to confront whatever lay outside. His heart pounded in his chest as the door swung wide, revealing the shadowy figure of the intruder just outside, his face partially obscured by the dim light from the street lamp. Mark's first instinct was to protect his family, but the sight of the intruder stunned him for a brief moment. Max, however, was quick to react. As the door opened, Max bolted out like a force of nature, rushing straight for the intruder. The intruder, caught off guard, staggered back, trying to regain his footing. Max's bark was deafening, and he wasted no time in positioning himself between the intruder and the door, his body tense and ready to spring. Mark's heart raced as he saw the true extent of Max's loyalty. This wasn't just a dog protecting his family, it was a fierce guardian willing to put everything on the line. The family watched in shock as the intruder, now visibly shaken, realized he was up against far more than he had bargained for. The intruder, now face-to-face with Max, felt a surge of panic. He had expected to break into the house with ease, but Max's presence was an entirely different story. The dog's eyes locked onto his with an unwavering intensity that sent a chill down the intruder's spine. Max's powerful stance, his growls and barking, were enough to make anyone second-guess their decisions. The intruder hesitated, his hands trembling as he took a step back, trying to gauge his options. Max, sensing the intruder's hesitation, took another step forward, his bark growing more menacing. The intruder's resolve was starting to crack. It was at that moment that the intruder realized he was in over his head. He had underestimated the dog, and his confidence quickly evaporated. He had come for the Johnsons' home, thinking it would be an easy target, but Max had proven him wrong in an instant. The intruder could feel his legs growing weak, his breath coming in shallow gasps. There was no way he was going to make it past this protective golden retriever. In a final, desperate move, The intruder turned and fled, retreating into the shadows of the night, his plans completely thwarted. Max's barking echoed through the neighborhood as the intruder disappeared, and the family, still in shock, realized how narrowly they had escaped danger. Once the intruder had fled, Max stood guard at the door, his barking subsiding into deep, protective growls. Mark quickly shut the door and locked it, turning to the rest of the family, his heart still racing. Susan, Emma, and Jack, all wide-eyed and trembling, rushed to Max's side, enveloping him in hugs and strokes. Max, still alert, seemed to understand that the danger had passed, though he didn't let his guard down completely. He continued to scan the yard, watching the darkness, as if the intruder might return. The family breathed a collective sigh of relief, grateful that Max had been there to protect them. Susan, her voice shaky, thanked Max repeatedly. "You saved us, Max. You really saved us," she whispered, her eyes filled with tears. Emma and Jack, both still processing the events, hugged the dog tightly. For them, Max was no longer just their playful companion. He had become a hero in their eyes. Mark, too, could hardly believe what had just transpired. He knew Max was protective, but never in his wildest dreams had he imagined that the dog would save them from such an imminent threat. It was a moment that would stay with the Johnsons forever, a moment that proved the depth of Max's loyalty and courage. Even after the intruder had fled, Max's protective instincts didn't waver. He remained at the door, his eyes scanning the yard, his ears perked for any sign of movement. It was as though the danger had never truly left, and Max was determined to stay on high alert until he was absolutely certain the threat had passed. The family, still shaken by the night's events, sat together in the living room, their eyes occasionally glancing at the door. Max's vigilance was a silent comfort, a reminder that they were safe, at least for the moment. As the hours passed and the tension in the house slowly dissipated, Mark and Susan decided to call the police to report the attempted break-in. Max, though clearly exhausted from the adrenaline rush, remained watchful, as if he knew his job wasn't quite finished yet. The police arrived soon after, taking the family's statements and investigating the scene. Max was a quiet presence during the entire process, never straying far from the family's side. The officers, too, were impressed by Max's actions, recognizing that the dog had likely prevented a potential disaster. They assured the Johnsons that they had done the right thing by staying inside and locking the door, but emphasized how fortunate they were that Max had been there to protect them. The following days were filled with a deep sense of gratitude. The Johnsons couldn't stop talking about Max's bravery, how he had sensed the danger before anyone else had, and how he had prevented a tragedy. The kids, still in awe of Max's heroism, made sure to give him extra love and attention. They even created a special thank you card for him, complete with paw prints and drawings of Max in superhero poses. Max, ever humble, accepted their gestures with the same calm demeanor he always had, but the family knew he understood the depth of their appreciation. Mark and Susan, too, reflected on the events that had unfolded. It was hard to believe how close they had come to disaster, but they were eternally grateful for Max's quick thinking and unwavering protection. They had always known he was special, but now they realized just how extraordinary he truly was. Max had proven that loyalty, courage, and love could come in the form of a golden retriever, and his actions would be a reminder to the Johnsons of how fortunate they were to have such a devoted companion. From that day forward, Max's place in their hearts was even more secure, and their bond was stronger than ever before. The Johnsons weren't the only ones who recognized Max's heroism. As news of the attempted break-in spread through their neighborhood, the entire community rallied behind Max's. Neighbors who had always admired the Johnsons' loyal golden retriever now saw him as a local hero. The family received heartfelt messages, cards, and even flowers from those who had heard about Max's bravery. Some of the neighbors even called or visited to thank Max personally, giving him treats and toys as a token of appreciation. It was as if the whole neighborhood had become one large family, united by Max's protective instincts and the events that had brought them closer together. The Johnsons, while still processing everything that had happened, couldn't help but feel a deep sense of pride for Max. They had always known how much he loved them, but seeing the entire community acknowledge his bravery made their hearts swell with gratitude. The local news even picked up the story, broadcasting Max's heroics across the city. People everywhere were inspired by his courage, and the Johnsons received countless messages from strangers, thanking them for sharing Max's story. It seemed as though Max's actions had created a ripple effect of kindness and appreciation that extended far beyond their home, and the family felt an overwhelming sense of love and support from all sides. In the weeks that followed, Max's life seemed to change in subtle, yet meaningful ways. No longer just the family's beloved pet, Max had become something of a local legend. He was invited to several community events, where he was celebrated for his bravery. People asked to take pictures with him, and some even approached the Johnsons about sharing his story at schools and animal shelters to inspire others about the power of loyalty and protection. Mark and Susan were initially taken aback by the attention, but they soon realized that Max's story had become a symbol of courage in their community. They were more than happy to share his story, knowing how much he had done for them and how his actions had touched so many others. Max, for his part, seemed to take it all in stride. He continued to be his playful, loving self at home, never letting the newfound attention change his demeanor. He still loved to curl up at the foot of the bed, play with the kids in the yard, and chase after tennis balls like he always had. But when the time came for him to step into the spotlight, he did so with a quiet grace, accepting his newfound status as a hero with the same calm and loyalty that had made him a protector in the first place. To the Johnsons, Max was still the same dog they had always loved, but to the world, he had become a beacon of hope, showing everyone the true meaning of selfless devotion. In recognition of Max's bravery, the Johnsons decided to host a small ceremony at their home to honor him. They invited family, friends, and neighbors to gather in their backyard to celebrate the dog who had saved their lives. It wasn't a grand affair, just a simple gathering with food, drinks, and plenty of love for the dog who had shown so much courage. The ceremony was filled with heartfelt speeches and laughter as people shared their admiration for Max. The kids even created a special hero collar for Max, decorated with ribbons and charms to symbolize his bravery. As the ceremony came to a close, Mark stepped forward to present Max with a plaque that read, "For courage, loyalty, and selfless protection, a hero to us all." Susan, with tears in her eyes, hugged Max tightly, whispering words of gratitude in his ear. Max, ever humble, wagged his tail in response, seemingly content with the attention but more focused on the love and affection he was receiving from his family and friends. It was a moment that marked the culmination of everything Max had done for the Johnsons. The family had always known Max was special, but now everyone around them knew it too. Max's story didn't just inspire the people around him, it also had a profound impact on other pets in the community. As word of Max's heroics spread, many families began to recognize the importance of training and preparing their pets for situations where protection might be needed. Local animal shelters began to receive an influx of donations, with people wanting to support animals that could one day make a difference, just like Max had. Training programs for dogs became more popular, and owners realized the importance of teaching their pets not only obedience, but also how to react in high-stress situations. Max's influence extended beyond just being a hero in his family's eyes. He became an example for responsible pet ownership, showing people how a dog could go beyond being a companion to become a protector. Shelters even began using Max's story to inspire people to adopt and train rescue dogs, showing that these animals, too, could make a significant impact on their communities. The Johnsons, who had always been advocates for animal adoption, found themselves even more passionate about the cause. They worked alongside local shelters to help raise awareness and promote the importance of adopting dogs that might one day save lives, just like Max had done for them. As the months passed, the bond between Max and the Johnsons grew even stronger. Every day was a reminder of just how lucky they were to have such a loyal and brave dog in their lives. Mark and Susan, who had always loved Max deeply, now saw him as a member of their family in a way they had never imagined before. Max had proven himself in the most extraordinary way, and they couldn't help but appreciate every moment they had with him. Whether it was taking walks together, playing in the yard, or simply sitting on the couch with Max curled up at their feet, every experience felt more meaningful now. For Emma and Jack, Max had become more than just a pet. He was their protector, their constant source of comfort, and their best friend. They often found themselves reflecting on the night of the break-in, remembering how Max had kept them safe and how his actions had changed their lives forever. It was impossible to look at Max without seeing a hero, a true companion who had gone above and beyond to ensure their safety. As the years passed, Max remained at the heart of the family, a reminder of the love, loyalty, and courage that defined their bond. And for the Johnsons, every wag of Max's tail was a reminder of just how much he meant to them. As time passed, the Johnson family continued to cherish every moment with Max. The children, Emma and Jack, grew older, and with each passing year, Max became more of a symbol of family strength and love. The once energetic puppy had matured into a wise, protective dog who seemed to have a sixth sense when it came to the needs of the family. Emma, now a teenager, often reflected on the night Max saved their lives. She realized how much her own perspective on loyalty and bravery had been shaped by his actions. To Emma, Max wasn't just a dog. He was a constant reminder of what it meant to protect those you love, no matter the cost. Jack, who had always had a special connection with Max, felt an even deeper bond with the dog as he grew older. He began to take more responsibility for caring for Max, ensuring he had regular exercise and food, and even teaching Max new tricks as a way of showing gratitude. The once energetic golden retriever, while no longer the young pup he once was, continued to be the heart and soul of the Johnson family. His presence brought peace to their home, and his loyalty remained unwavering. As Max aged, the Johnsons ensured that his later years were filled with love, comfort, and joy, just as he had given them all those years of devotion and protection. Max's actions had a profound effect on the Johnsons' family values. Mark and Susan began to place even more emphasis on the importance of loyalty, trust, and responsibility within their household. They often spoke about the lessons Max had taught them, how loyalty could save lives, how trust in one another was essential, and how the responsibility of caring for a family member was a duty to be taken seriously. As Emma and Jack grew older, they took these lessons to heart. They knew that loyalty wasn't just a quality to be admired in others, it was something to be embodied every day. Max's example of unconditional love and protection became a standard for the family to strive toward, influencing how they treated one another and others around them. Mark and Susan also started to reflect more on how they could give back to the community in a way that mirrored Max's selflessness. They volunteered at animal shelters, promoted the importance of adopting rescue dogs, and spoke at events about the power of animal protection and the role pets play in families. Through these actions, the Johnsons hoped to honor Max's legacy, ensuring that his story of courage and love would inspire others to recognize the value of every dog, not just as a pet but as a protector and family member. Max had given the Johnsons far more than just safety. He had instilled in them a deeper sense of purpose and a stronger commitment to kindness and responsibility. Max's impact extended far beyond the Johnson family. In the years following the break-in, stories of his bravery and selflessness were shared on local news, in newspapers, and through social media. His tale of courage became a symbol of hope, inspiring countless individuals to not only be better pet owners, but also to embrace the lessons Max had taught: the importance of loyalty, bravery, and protecting those you love. Mark and Susan received messages from all over the world, with people sharing how Max's story had inspired them to be more compassionate toward their pets and more aware of the potential in every animal to do extraordinary things. Max's legacy continued to live on even after he passed away. The Johnsons, who had made sure Max lived his final years in comfort, often found themselves recalling the moments of joy and gratitude they had shared with him. They created a small garden in their backyard in his honor, planting flowers and placing a memorial plaque that read, "To Max, a loyal protector, a brave hero, and a forever friend." Every year on the anniversary of the break-in, the Johnsons gathered in the garden to remember Max and the profound impact he had on their lives. Max's legacy wasn't just about the night he saved them. It was about the enduring love he gave, the lessons he taught, and the way he changed their hearts forever. As Max entered his senior years, his health began to decline, but his instincts remained sharp. One afternoon, as Mark was working in the yard, Max, despite his slowing gait, seemed to grow more alert. He stood by Mark's side, watching the perimeter of the property as if sensing something was wrong. Mark, who had come to trust Max's judgment implicitly, paused and looked around. He spotted a stranger approaching the gate, someone who didn't belong in the neighborhood. Before Mark could even call out, Max's deep bark rang through the yard, startling the intruder. The man, who had been attempting to scope out the property, immediately turned and fled. Max's protective instincts had not waned, even as his body weakened with age. The family knew that this last act of bravery was a fitting end to the hero he had always been. Mark gave Max a loving pat and promised him that he would always be protected, just as Max had done for the Johnsons over the years. That night, as the family sat together, Max rested by their feet, content and calm, knowing that his family was safe and loved. The Johnsons knew that no matter how much time passed, Max's spirit of protection and love would always be with them, guiding them as they carried on his legacy. After Max's passing, the Johnsons felt an overwhelming sense of loss. However, rather than focus solely on their grief, they decided to honor his memory in a way that would continue his legacy of protection and love. They created a fund in Max's name, aimed at helping rescue dogs and supporting animal shelters in need. They partnered with a local rescue organization to provide training programs for dogs, ensuring that other animals could be prepared to protect families, just as Max had done. This tribute to Max not only helped dogs find loving homes, but also provided essential resources to keep them safe and trained for their new families. The golden retriever statue they had placed in the garden became a constant reminder of Max's spirit. Neighbors, friends, and even strangers who had heard about Max's story came to visit the memorial, leaving flowers, cards, and messages of love. Max's story, his courage, and his unwavering devotion had made a lasting impression on everyone who knew him. The Johnsons knew that Max's legacy would continue to live on, not only in their hearts, but in the many lives he had touched through his actions. And as the years went by, Max's memory only grew stronger, inspiring others to love and protect their pets as fiercely as he had protected his family. In the years following Max's passing, the Johnson family struggled with the loss of their beloved dog. Although they had adopted another dog, a golden retriever puppy named Daisy, it was clear that no one could ever replace Max. As time went on, however, the family realized that Daisy had inherited some of Max's qualities, especially his loving and comforting presence. Daisy was gentle, intuitive, and often seemed to know when someone needed a little extra care. During times of stress or sadness, Daisy would nuzzle up to a family member, offering unconditional love and support, just as Max had done. Emma, who had been especially close to Max, found herself confiding in Daisy when life became overwhelming. The dog's comforting presence helped her navigate difficult situations, whether it was the challenges of school or the emotional roller coaster of growing up. Mark and Susan, too, found solace in Daisy's company, knowing that while they would never forget Max, the love and protection they had experienced with him could still be felt through Daisy's actions. Daisy's role as the family's new protector and source of comfort helped heal the wounds left by Max's absence, ensuring that the family's bond remained strong and filled with love. The story of Max's bravery and loyalty quickly spread beyond the Johnson household. Neighbors who had heard about the golden retriever's heroic actions came to visit the family, offering condolences after Max's passing. Many of them shared their own stories of how Max had been a familiar and comforting presence in the neighborhood. Some recalled how Max had often wandered through the streets, checking in on elderly neighbors and even alerting the local mailman when he had overstayed his visit on particularly hot days. Max had been an unofficial neighborhood watchdog, ensuring that everyone felt safe and cared for. In honor of Max, the Johnsons organized an annual neighborhood gathering, where they would share stories of the dog who had brought the community together. The event was a way to celebrate Max's life and impact, with neighbors offering tributes and recounting how Max had touched their hearts. The gathering soon became a cherished tradition, and as years passed, it transformed into a celebration of pets and community spirit. Max's legacy of loyalty, bravery, and love had extended far beyond the Johnsons' home, and it was clear that his influence would be felt for many years to come. As Emma grew older, her bond with Daisy deepened. The two became inseparable, and Emma often reflected on the many lessons she had learned from both Max and Daisy. Max had taught her about loyalty, bravery, and the importance of family, while Daisy helped her understand the true meaning of emotional support and the healing power of love. Daisy, despite being a puppy when she first arrived, seemed to sense that she was stepping into a big role, one that Max had left behind. It wasn't long before Daisy began to mirror some of Max's protective instincts, always watching over Emma and alerting her to anything out of the ordinary. Emma took Daisy with her everywhere, from school to the local park. Daisy's gentle nature and comforting presence provided Emma with a sense of stability, especially during challenging times. As Emma entered adulthood, she continued to carry the lessons Max had imparted to her. She often found herself reflecting on how Max had shaped her worldview and how she had come to understand that love, loyalty, and protection weren't just qualities to admire in others, but were virtues to live by every day. Daisy, with her quiet devotion, became a symbol of the love Max had left behind, a love that continued to guide Emma through the years. The Johnson family's decision to adopt a new golden retriever puppy named Charlie was a difficult one. Although they knew no dog could ever replace Max, they felt that their home was incomplete without a loyal companion. Charlie, with his playful energy and curiosity, quickly became a beloved member of the family. However, as he grew older, it became clear that Charlie was beginning to follow in Max's footsteps in more ways than one. Like Max, Charlie exhibited an innate protective instinct, especially when it came to Emma and Jack. He seemed to sense when either of them was upset or in distress, and would immediately seek them out, offering comfort in his own way. Mark and Susan noticed how Charlie's protective behavior mirrored Max's. He would sit at the door when strangers approached, alert but calm, as if he understood the need to be vigilant. Charlie's actions were a reminder of Max's legacy, and the family couldn't help but smile whenever they saw his protective instincts at work. Charlie was not just a puppy. He was a continuation of the love, loyalty, and bravery that Max had shown throughout his life. The family felt that in adopting Charlie, they were not just bringing a new dog into their home. They were honoring Max's memory and ensuring that his spirit of protection and love would continue for years to come. In memory of Max's incredible life and the impact he had on their family and community, the Johnsons decided to create a memorial fund in his name. The fund aimed to support other rescue dogs and provide financial assistance for their care and training, especially for those with special needs or who had been abandoned. Mark and Susan hoped that by starting the fund, they could honor Max's legacy of selflessness and protect more animals, just as Max had protected them. The Golden Retriever Memorial Fund was met with overwhelming support from the community. Donations poured in from friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had heard about Max's story. The fund helped countless dogs find their forever homes, and many of them were trained to become service animals or protection dogs, just as Max had been. The Johnsons knew that Max's legacy was far from over. Through the fund, Max's memory lived on, and his spirit of bravery, love, and loyalty continued to inspire others to protect and care for animals in need. It was a fitting tribute to a dog who had given so much, and the family felt proud to carry on his story for generations to come.